the February edition of the CTAC meeting. If we could have a roll call, please.
Sure thing. Matt Rowe.
Here.
Mara Banks. Brett Bierce. Joe Burrito.
Here.
John Castellanarian. Justin Chenault. Jacob Clay. Jeffrey Combs. Micah Cunningham. Patricia Ecarnation. Rupert Farley. Glenn Goldsmith. Larry Gross. Is it Gross?
Yes.
Okay. Larry Gross. Jaron Hayes. Michael Hoyt. Michael Hoyt. Travis King. Nicholas Watnowski.
Here.
David McLaughlin.
Here.
Ann Palvakar. Ken Progue. James Powell. Dustin Savage. Rodney Thomas.
Here.
All right, Chair, we have quorum.
All right, great. And everyone should have a copy of the agenda in front of them and received one by email, and we can entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
One quick correction that was noted,
Okay.
that we need to update the date to be 2023, not 2022.
Duly noted, thank you.
Mhm.
Is there such a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Okay,
Second.
all right, motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Shouldn't we be moving to make that, I didn't hear anyone make the movement to make
Well,
the motion to,
the one that we have in front of us is the amended one, so I assume that the amended,
oh, the agenda,
the
sorry.
agenda.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's okay.
Actually,
right.
no, it's for the minutes. I got them slipped. My apologies.
Oh, okay,
I'll come later.
okay.
So-
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now the minutes. And
Yeah.
so the minutes have the one switch with this.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the January 11th, 2023 minutes as amended?
Dave McLaughlin moves to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion?
Second.
Second? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comment, yep, we are in public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Do you have anyone in attendance who would like to make a public comment? Please do.
This will be similar to what I'm on. Ms. Chinchicoti, I will mail back claim transfer in the Celebrate Virginia North community. I'm a member of the Homeowners Association appointed Celebrate Transportation Connection Team, or PCT, of which there are 8 members. I am one. We've been appointed by the information primarily to research the transportation because of and formally celebrate residents. After monitoring the FAMPO interregional multimodal east-west mobility study, phase 2 road bike pedestrian. As FAMPO entities prepare to vote on whether to adopt this study, the CCP is formally expressing a recommendation that the vote on the study be deferred. Specifically, the following items require clarification and should be addressed in further detail before a formal vote. Number 1, for the Kansas Policy Committee reports, there are 5 different alternatives being reviewed for a Rappahannock River Bridge crossing west of I-95. Something like this, the one using and extending Celebrate Junior Parkway. Reportedly, a committee of local experts has been formed to identify and analyze the 5 bridge alternatives. And it will be several months yet before they have any results to report. Number 2, the online FAMPO survey to identify citizens' concerns related to contains several questions that were unclear or ambiguous. The TCT requests that any conclusions in the study attributed to this survey be dismissed. Number 3, There is no reference in this study to a proposed large mixed residential commercial project by silver companies, which could be located in the same area, the terminus point of Celebrate Parkway. The TCT suggests a vote on a river crossing in this area be deferred until action by Stafford County on the silver company's proposal be finalized. Additionally, many Celebrate community residents have expressed strong concerns or objections to a crossing at the end of Celebrate Parkway, including, among others, greatly increased parkway traffic and the likelihood of this, including many tractor trailers, noise, endangered safety at multiple residential entrances. There are other developments on that parkway. We are in particular Celebrate a senior community, and we have 5 entrances directly off the parkway. And there are some soon day going to be gates closed, and there are only between 2 and 1 entrance, 4 or 5 cars between the parkway itself and the gate. So endangering safety. Declining property values, which represent a stable service impact.
Thank you for your time. Anybody else like to make?
I'd like to speak to is taking bias now, so I'm a member of the TCT on this one right now. I wanted to comment on the streetlight data agenda today. I found it very interesting. I've had a business career in IT and data analysis, and I love data. But I think that the one to point out that my concern with data that's presented in the survey, or a presentation person, being that it was collected in 2019. I think that it would be really valuable to have more recent data as well as time of day kind of issue. I think that with the global pandemic and the changes to people's driving habits with the pandemic, possibly we see fewer people going to Central Park and other changes with shopping habits as well as commuting habits. So I'm really interested to see that data update.
Thank you. Do we have any correspondence that was?
I have.
Well, you're not really a public though. You're a member.
Y'all can speak as a private citizen.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't do
We
that.
can,
You can do that as a member report
So-
later on in the
yeah.
agenda.
on item 8, section B, member reports, that's when you can.
No offense. It's just
Yeah.
keeping with the Robert's Rules of
Yeah.
Order.
Okay.
Okay. Any prior submitted correspondence?
Yes, so first off, and I provided these in the agenda packets that you have, we have one from Jane Leeds. She is recommending that CTAC group check out a presentation done by Lara. I hope I'm getting that one. It was done for Leader Dogs for the Blind. I provided the web link, and if you want it, send me an email and I'll provide that to you. It was recently done with the Lions Club of Virginia, and she felt like it would be worthy for FAMPO GRC to take a look at that. In addition, she also wants to remind FAMPO GWRC and CTAC that is supposed to be seeking out the advice and suggestions of the public at large, not just from members of the Board of Supervisors or management. In addition, also in the agenda packet, and Jim Jacoby, I believe, also kind of read mostly, so I'll try to give an excerpt. It is a letter from individuals of the Celebrate by Del Webb community, making comment on the East-West mobility studies, discussion of a river cross option, and that is within it. If y'all feel confident that y'all can take a look at this, and I'll try to keep it short. This would wrap up our public comment.
If you don't read it, how does it get into the recording of the?
Well,
Okay, for
this, I mean, most of this was already read by, for the public, so. Whose name is attached to it, so I'm gonna,
possible that we had letters, we read until 5 minutes was up and then,
I think since that was the precedent, we should probably.
okay. Okay. Undersigned individuals and members of the Celebrate by Del Webb Communities Transportation Connections team. Our purpose is to research proposed transportation initiatives that may affect the community and inform Celebrate residents. The FAMPO Interregional Multimodal Study Phase 2 Roadway and Bicycle Pedestrian Report is one such project being monitored. Members of the TCT have attended FAMPO and Stafford County Board of Supervisors meeting where the East-West Mobility Study has been discussed. On January 4th, the CTC held an informational briefing for the community at Celebrate's Riverside Lodge. That meeting was attended by Mr. Ian Ollis of FAMPO and Stafford Supervisor Tom Cohen. Mr. Owen provided clarifications on the findings detailed within the study, particularly those related to the Rappahannock River crossing in the vicinity of Celebrate Virginia Parkway. Residents voiced concerns with the study and that the possible impacts from a bridge at the end of Celebrate Parkway. Subsequently, a number of residents who have provided feedback to FAMPO via email at the January 23rd public hearing. Additionally, a petition of concerned residents has made available to FAMPO. As the FAMPO Policy Committee prepares to vote on adopting the above reference report, Resolution 2309, the Celebrate Transportation Connections team would like to formally express our recommendation that the vote on the study be deferred. Specifically, the following items require clarification and should be addressed in further detail prior to a formal vote. At our January 4th meeting at the Riverside Lodge, Mr. Ollis stated that there are actually 5 different alternatives for a bridge crossing being reviewed. At the FAMPO Policy Committee meeting on January 23rd, Mr. Ollis gave an update. A committee has been formed of local experts to analyze the 5 alternative bridge locations, and it will be a few months before they have any results. It was also stated at this last that the committee would be voting on the Phase 2 report at their February 27th meeting. The TCT requests FAMPO Policy Committee delay acting on the entire Phase 2 report until the analysis of the 5 alternatives is complete. The expert analysis would the expert analysis would permit the FAMPO Policy Committee to consider all new alternatives to address the Route 17 corridor congestion rather than just one that focuses on Celebrate Parkway. Alternatively, the FAMPO Policy Committee might consider withdrawing the Route 17 corridor proposal from the Phase 2 report and proceed with the considerations of other findings. Online FAMPO survey to identify citizens' concerns related to traffic congestions contains several questions that were unclear or worded in a fashion that may have elicited an unattended response. Specifics that have been provided at several of the FAMPO meetings referenced above and in emails from residents of the Celebrate community. The TCT requests that any conclusions in the East-West Mobility Study attributed to this survey be dismissed. There is no reference in the study to a proposed large mixed residential commercial project by the Silver Companies, which would be located at the terminus point of Celebrate Virginia Parkway. The TCT suggests a vote on the river crossing in this area be deferred until action by Stafford County on the proposal. The Celebrate Transportation Connection team's concerns about the impact on our community would like to ensure that all pertinent factors related to traffic patterns are considered by FAMPO prior to any vote on the findings of the East-West Mobility Study. Legitimate residents' concerns related to the Rappahannock River crossing at the end of Celebrate Virginia include increased parkway traffic, specific commercial vehicles and trucks noise, safety at residential assists in declining property values. Celebrate Community represents a stable source of tax revenue for Stafford County, compromising that predictable source of tax revenue by lowering property values should not be a desirable option. Submitted for your consideration is most appreciated. Respectfully submitted to the FAMPO on February 7th, 2023. Joe Bonds, 64 Mendota Way, Fredericksburg. Randy Bryce, 102 Denison Street, Fredericksburg. Kim Jacoby, 2 Wellback Lane, Fredericksburg. Fran Larkins, 3 Battery Point Drive, Fredericksburg. Peggy Mathias, 6 Point Bluff Street, Fredericksburg. Alan Mendelin, 12 Hornby Street, Fredericksburg. Rosalind Reeder, 110 Bergenat Drive, Fredericksburg, and Pamela Taylor, 142 Castle Drive in Fredericksburg.
Thank you. Do we have any further? Do we have anyone on? Do we have anyone online that wanted to submit a public comment? Okay. Clear the public comment period over then. On to new business, the East-West Mobility Roadway Report.
Okay, kind of if you would bring that up. So before the CTAC committee here, we have the Integrated Multimodal East-West Mobility Study. This information has been presented a couple of times to the CTAC, and before you is whether or not you would wish to recommend this report for adoption to the policy committee. That is the action involved, and I would actually open it up to any of the committee members if they would like to have questions or if they have any other specific items or anything else to discuss.
Is there any way we can go over some of the projects?
Sure, absolutely.
Have like a presentation?
We have the full agenda here. So we provided a presentation at the last meeting.
Is there a particular thing in the report you want to check out, or just?
A lot of things in the report that I'm gonna comment. Fuslow Road, 4 lane,
Okay.
the Chatham Heights, demolition in the whole road, 4 lane road, and 2 sidewalks on both sides to change a 4 lane road into a 2 lane road. I have a lot of issues. I didn't see any traffic counts in the study. I think should be with the study. You know, I know the outer connector study had traffic counts in the whole region on each road. It was very revealing of what the improvements would do. There's some traffic on some. It's like.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, I found the Chatham Heights part. Chatham Heights road is on page 53 of the proposal here.
So yes, with the Chatham Heights proposal, and they were looking out to 2050 for the potential traffic volumes, what they're looking to do is convert it from a 4-lane undivided highway to a 3-lane divided highway with a center turn lane. This is fairly common for roads that are under 20,000 vehicles and annual average daily traffic volumes. And to kind of in a unique way, what they're really doing here is that for the most part, Chatham Heights, both left turn or left travel lanes are kind of serving as a quasi de facto left turn lane. And so in this one, they're actually giving a place for cars that would be making a left turn to basically exit out of through lane travel and make a turn. It's not uncommon, but when we're looking out at 2050, if the travel volume and capacity demands, because Cool Springs Road is more or less handling most of the traffic and it's a parallel road about a quarter of a mile away, it's just not seeing any real demand for additional vehicular capacity. It's very much under capacity. And so in one way, if we wanted to provide pedestrian infrastructure for any multimodal activities. Without doing that and acquiring right of way from private property, this will allow you to keep basically the same vehicular functionality in class as far as level of service, while also providing basically a safer left turn option and not take any additional right of way for providing additional pedestrian infrastructure along the corridor.
Left turns are really tough there.
And there's a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mix of commercial businesses as well as private residences along that road.
The thing is, once 95 gets backed up, Chatham Heights Road gets hit pretty hard with traffic. So I'm very concerned about spending money that's going to reduce the capacity on the road when there's already sidewalks there. So I don't really see the benefit of it, so to speak. I think the more benefit of putting sidewalks on Route 17, Butler Road in front of the YMCA. I've seen women pushing their strollers on 17 because there's no sidewalks on it. And very dangerous. I just think there's a higher and better use for the money.
Comments, provide bike lanes. We have this beautiful new bridge, the Chatham Bridge that crosses the Rappahannock River. Multi-use spot for people to cycle and walk across the bridge, and then it runs there. You get to the other side of the bridge, and then any place you can go with a bicycle or your stroller is under the bridge on the river. You can't actually get to any houses or any shops or any neighborhoods. So you can go for a weekend, stroll down the river, but you can't actually get anywhere.
Can we see page 54 while he's talking about this so we can see the cross section?
That is practical. And so the idea here is that you are creating bike lanes and providing those turn lanes for the traffic simultaneously. In terms of cost, this is the cheapest project that FAMPO probably has ever tailed, because it's largely paint, right? It's largely paint. So you will get 0 miles of sidewalk if you were to, instead of this project, take the money and do something else with it. Because it is the cheapest project out of everything in this study, in the VCR study, in any of the studies that have been done since I've been here. This is the cheapest project. It's largely paint together with perhaps some other barrier to protect the bicycles. That's all it is. And because of that, because they're not taking away any asphalt, if in future years you decide you really, really need the road widened, all you do is go and remove the paint. Right? It's the cheapest thing to convert back to 4 lanes of roadway. So it's one of those very low risk projects. If it doesn't work, to undo it is the quickest, cheapest thing. You're not committing yourself to this terrible thing that you can't undo. You can undo it in about 3 days. You just send somebody out there to scrape off the paint and you're done.
But you're all committing money, right?
Sorry?
But you all committing money to it, right? It's not free, is it?
As I said to you, it's the cheapest project FAMPO
But what he's saying is you can commit that money to safety instead of aesthetics.
Not necessarily for safety, you're separating the traffic from the bicycles by putting a buffer zone and probably.
What about separating pedestrians from cars?
So.
I'm talking about what he's talking about on Butler Road. There are people walking down the street because there's no sidewalk. You got homes, you got sidewalks, you got the YMCA, you got everything he's talking about, no sidewalks. You got mothers and babies and strollers, but we're thinking about fixing up a street so it can look good because we got a new bridge.
It's not for looks, it's for people to bicycle. Get to things. There is a solution for your problem on Butler Road. The county is currently running a study on Butler Road to look. So that's already in process. It's not an either or.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, in this study, they didn't really talk about it specifically, but they accounted for a 4-lane Butler Road between Route 1 and Route 212, Chatham Heights Road, that would be in place.
You can read about the comments on Butler Road in there. The CLRP, the constrained long range plan in the long range transportation plan 2050 of FAMPO already has a plan by the county to widen Butler Road. And right now, the county is running a Butler Road study to actually deal with the concerns that you were talking about, but it's not a FAMPO study, county study. So I can't comment on this county study. It's not my study.
And as far as a funding pot, traditionally this type of treatment will be done when a road is resurfaced. So it's coming out of the maintenance budget. And so when the next time VDOT resurfaces, grounds down the asphalt and repaves and repaints, they can apply this treatment. So it's not done as an individual or new project. It's done during a maintenance, and it would not necessarily be that they actually could not take that money and apply it to a sidewalk. They'll just go, what's the next road on the list that needs repaving? And that would be the next.
So you're saying that that quarter mile between Butler Road and quarter mile, half mile, I don't know the exact distance of it, where it's a 2-lane road with turn lanes, they're not gonna do anything there.
That would be part of a separate project.
So I'm trying to explain that the county has a study called the Butler Road Study, which they are doing.
Okay, that part I understand. But there's a part of Chatham that's a 2-lane road on east side of where a 4-lane road with turn lanes by the little strip mall there. The whole thing is not together highway. It's about a quarter mile, maybe a half a mile. You have a strip mall and a McDonald's on this side. You have the True Value place on this side. And then, yes, it's a divided highway right there with a medium and turn lanes. So
Take the median out then.
So the study has not designed those bike lanes with that level of detail in this report, because the engineering study is following this to actually do that. So the consultant will be able to brief you and the other family committees on exactly what they're doing. I haven't started on the final design. This, and that's one of the concerns I have about a lot of the public comments that are happening about the report. This is a high-level analysis of the big picture. It's not getting down into individual design elements, which is what you're asking about. Is it going to be this wide or that wide or whatever? That is coming in the final phase of this project. They've only just begun. So we don't have those kind of lane widths and the number of lanes until you yet. It's coming. It's too early to talk about that exact thing. So this is the general proposal, right? The actual design work has to be done before it can be taken any further. And remember also, a planning study at FAMPO is not an action. It doesn't result in anything getting built. It is sharing information and ideas. And then FAMPO needs to decide whether they wish to provide funding to do any of these. And then finally, the county has to actually sign off on it as to whether they even want that project. So some studies that are done in FAMPO, the counties or the city decide we don't want this project. But it is an interesting study. So then we don't go and do anything with that particular project. So there's a whole lot of steps that still have to happen before anything happens on it. This doesn't result in anything getting built because there's no money, right? We can't turn any of this into a project until you have the money to do it. And I urge you to scroll down to the end, because if you haven't read all the pages of the study, I'd just like to point out in the very final recommendations on the roadway section, there are some specifics there which have been modified since the previous version.
But we're in the appendix now, it'd be above the appendix, right?
Above the appendix, yeah.
Do you know which page?
Last page of,
I haven't memorized it, but just go up higher. Before the bicycles.
House Road, straight.
There is a page which talks about further up.
The next
Further up,
steps,
you're still on bicycles, yes.
next step starts on page 39.
So go to page 39. Here we go. Higher. There you go. So these are the actual recommendations of what we will do. And it might put your mind at ease.
good.
further down. Yeah. So these are projects which they're recommending that we take to not action, but to further study, right? Which means we're getting away now from the high level concept. And we now need to start doing some actual drawings so that we can see exactly how it's going to work. So the Centerport Parkway extension, to connect it down to Enon Road, right? The county wishes us to actually do some designs on that. The connection from Plantation through Centerport, through Enon Road to Centerport. So this is work that's actually proposed to run. You read this river crossing recommendation. Coordination with stakeholders to build regional alignment on viable corridors and approach to the roadway, development of environmental pivoting materials and crossing. No, this is, have you got the latest version of this? Is this the version that's served before the TAC?
One that's currently on the website.
No, that's not the latest version. You don't have the right version here. I don't think. Scroll down. No, this is the wrong version of the report. Scroll down further. Yeah, you're not looking at the latest version, I'm afraid, of the report. If you go to the TAC, if you can just go to the website and click on the TAC agenda.
Yeah, I'm changing it now.
The TAC agenda has got the latest version of the report, which has detailed recommendations.
And that'll be.
The TAC agenda from last week. If you just click on the
East-west.
there you go. Just click on the there. Click on it. And then you need to scroll down to page. What was that again? Chair?
39.
Page 39.
It might be a little bit farther because that's the resolution at the top.
Yeah, just to let's say page 40. We want to actually see.
Next steps, page 41.
No, up here.
Oh, okay.
This is the latest version of the report. So I think, sorry, but you've been looking at the wrong version. The new Western network, right? This here is what I was just talking about. So it's recommending that a network be designed to connect Plantation, Enon Road up to Centerport Parkway, and the Stafford County has just approved a development north of that to connect from Centerport, a development which includes space for a road to be built from Centerport Parkway up towards Mine Road. So where the Mine Road extension project, which was talked about for many, many, many years by the county, it connects through. So you have this network that will connect Foundation, Enon, Centerport Parkway up to Mine Road, and eventually it crosses your courthouse road in Stafford County. So that's one proposal which the policy committee has asked the consultant to study further and do some drawings. Harrison Road widening. If we're going to build interchange on the I-95 at Harrison Road, before you do that, you have to widen Harrison Road. And so they've asked the consultant to start doing design work on how to widen Harrison Road leading to where the I-95 would be, so that a possible connection could be. The Rappahannock River crossing. This project would create a connection. So FAMPO is initiating, here we go, a river crossing study process. Would be a separate study to evaluate a range of alternatives associated with a potential crossing. That process, and not any assumptions made in this study, would determine a preferred alignment for the river crossing and adjoining roadways. This is very important because what it's telling you is that if you approve the study, you're not approving a specific alignment for any of these projects. What you're doing is telling the consultant, great, at a conceptual level, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, but now go and do your homework and do some designs and drawings and come back to us so that we can have a look at those. And on this particular one, the consultant is not even doing it. We're telling the consultant not to do anything on this river crossing because we're going to do a new
research report, which may lead to a final study which has looked at the alternatives, and they're not 5, by the way, that's a misquote. I didn't actually say there were 5. There are multiple options that we're looking at, but it's not 5. But, and there's no committee. FAMPO does not have any other committees than the ones you know about. There's a subcommittee of the TAC, which is reviewing the CMAC and STGB prioritization methodology. We have a staff working group that is trying to find the data on potential options to cross the river, but it's a staff level working group. It's not a committee of FAMPO. Everything that we do as staff then gets presented to all the FAMPO committees to discuss and advice from our committees as to what to do about that information. It's just information sharing. So these are important points to note when you want to decide if you like the study or not, because this gives you clear guidance as to what the next steps are going to be. Can we just scroll to the next page just to make sure that there are no things I've missed? Okay, so this is the Harrison, this is the other projects which have been identified, but the policy committee have not asked the consultant to take these any further. In other words, we note them, we see them in the study, we think that they may or may not in future be projects that we wish to continue with. But for now, we're not spending further money on investigating them at this point. They may happen in the future.
They've essentially been tabled for now.
For now, yes. And remember, FAMPO does not and cannot implement a project in somebody's jurisdiction, ever. The jurisdiction would have to look at our study and say, yes, we agree with the study, and we're going to raise money, we want this thing to be built. If they don't do that, everything that FAMPO has done in terms of a study remains that, a good study that we have available for future use. But FAMPO never instructs anybody to build anything that the jurisdiction, county or the city has not asked for. Can't do that. We have no legal right to build anything. In fact, FAMPO doesn't build anything. It's a study recommending some things, but the counties and the city would have to decide to support them if they ever are going to get built. We do research, we don't do construction. We do research and we offer ideas and proposals to jurisdictions who then decide whether or not they like them.
Yeah, in the future, when documents are changed, can you like highlight the change so we know what's changed in it? Because I didn't read it thoroughly. I thought it was the same document. Kind of the learning that there's some changes made.
This is the latest version which you have now, and I'll ask your committee staff to make sure in future that you get the latest version of this. This is the version that served at the TAC last week. So this is the version that's going.
So those projects that are right there are tabled now.
So these projects, you can read, as indicated throughout the report, other identified projects could address congestion along key corridors. Advancement of these projects would include additional modeling, engineering, and evaluation of alternatives to address congestion. There is no instruction to do those things, modeling, engineering, whatever. We would require the policy committee to instruct that that should be done. Okay. But at the moment, there's no instruction to do those things. So they are put in the report for future reference. And if in future the policy committee or one of the jurisdictions says, oh, we like this one, can you take it further? We would then take it further.
So the only three are the Western Network with Enon and Centerport and Plantation, Harrison Road widening, Rappahannock Crossing.
Plus the bike paths, which are bottoms. And then you've already seen the transit report previously, which had 2 bus projects and 2 bike paths as well. So those are the projects that are still active in the system.
But these 3 are the only roadway projects.
Those are the only roadway projects. The others remain in the study so that if the counties or the city or the FAMPO policy committee decides that they want to proceed with one of those, we can then pick it up again because we still have the modeling data, we still have the study report, and if we need to raise funding, we have to have a study to support fundraising in order to get the funds from federal and state grants to build these things. So you have to have them in the report if you've studied them, in case you want to pick it up in 10 years' time and come back and build the thing. Have a study recommending that you build the thing.
Dave, did you have a question?
I was going to say that the technical committee only met on Monday. So those changes have happened between here and Monday. So the package we got was the previous report to this. So that kind of.
Literally, this has only happened on Monday.
Yeah, exactly. That's why these changes. So, but I mean, we have focused, a lot of focus last meeting and the public comments we got all about the crossing the river. So I literally was going to come to this meeting and say, we need to put in some words about where this FAMPO study and ongoing, this is not, can you go up to page 17, please? I think it'd be the same on this. This will be real quick. This won't take long at all. Maybe it's 18 now. Go down one more to the, anyway, I'm looking for the river crossing.
20, page 20.
Nope, keep going. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to make the suggestion that in this paragraph, which is the real first introduction of this Rappahannock Crossing, we put in there that, hey, there's, it says in there, this is just a conceptual, this is not the final version, but people don't glom onto that. And maybe we add some words in there about their ongoing studies,
We actually have a,
river crossing studies, something like that.
it's on the next page. So if you go
Now slid to the next page.
page, there's a caption there and it says,
Does not represent the recommended course.
Right. But, okay, I know it said that. I'm not saying it didn't, but what I'm saying, it's still people don't glom on it.
that's fair.
So I was saying you add some words in there, kind of like what has been added below, what you showed. There's an ongoing study that we're looking at multiple options for crossing the river. This is for the study purpose only. And then we wouldn't have all this time we're spending on this.
For every study that we do, always look at the recommendations in the latest version of the report, because that's what says what we're going to do about this. Until you get to the recommendations, it's the information.
And I'm not disagreeing in any way with that. I'm saying it might be better some wording that would emphasize that point early on in the study.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from here.
I'm not,
Technically,
we're saying it's fine. It's just,
technically, it does all the things that you're talking about, but to hammer home and re-emphasize the point,
that's what,
maybe multiple times, just to keep that as clear as possible. Because we could go ahead and recommend adoption with that suggestion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's sort of related, but they're talking about working on the Route 1 bridge. And I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I can imagine it's not going to be fun. Is there any thought that Butler Road is going to become a bleeder to divert traffic that's backing up their Route 1, trying to get across?
What, is there any update on Falmouth Bridge reconstruction? Because the last thing I've heard was that maybe they would do something similar to the Chatham Bridge where it's a full overhaul and they make a mixed use path instead of 2 sidewalks, but that's all I heard and there was definitely no date.
You don't mean close it entirely, do you?
I think, I don't know, it's an old.
They're not going to, I don't believe, I'm not VDOT, so you do have a VDOT member who's not here tonight. I would suggest that you send your questions directly to the VDOT member who can then find it out for you. But my understanding is that they will close a portion of the bridge, not the whole bridge while they're working. The rebuild is not as extensive as what was done on the Chatham Bridge.
Right.
They have told us that they don't believe that there is enough substructure under the bridge to be able to create a shared use path on the bridge.
Yep.
And I believe the city and Stafford are not happy about that. I'd like to engage with you on that, but I'm not bodied to that. We met with them and they told us they don't think that can be done. So we, wait for the city and the county to say what they believe.
And we're not talking about the addition of an additional shared use path in addition to the sidewalks. We're talking about, it's like how they did with Chatham, where you had the 2 sidewalks and then you just use the same space there.
that was,
Go to the policy committee page and pull up my slides from my administrator's report.
You can get there from the agenda.
the last meeting. you'll
A
see-
plug for Ian's administrative reports. They're very informative.
Go back there. Not see it there. On the right-hand side, you see administrator's presentation.
That means voluminous too.
Click on that. Point on the great thing here. So, scroll down there. So what you're talking about is this lip here. And you'll see the red arrows that I put in. So according to, this is the end of the road surface, right? The asphalt goes to there. And then this is the sidewalk. VDOT has said to us that there is no substructure here supporting this sidewalk that is strong enough to carry the weight of a truck if a truck ends up on the sidewalk. And if they make it wider, the lean and the weight is even more of a problem. And so they cannot widen this any more than 2 extra feet. It's 4 feet now. They're going to make it 6 feet. If we want a bike path, it's got to be 11. So if you want a shared use path like they have on the Chatham Bridge, you have to make it 11 feet. If you go out 11 feet, according to VDOT, there's not sufficient width on the steel substructure to accommodate that because they can't go so far out because the weight, you would then need to put pillars down into the river to support that wider sidewalk.
Yeah, that can't support half a lane of traffic.
That's what they've said. So if you try to shift it over here and then widen that, this sidewalk portion is apparently not strong enough to hold the full lane of traffic and not wide enough. And so they can't do that. I believe the city and Stafford are in discussions because they would like to try to find another way with VDOT, but the official view is that.
They have to, I mean, under current circumstances, wouldn't they have to essentially just rebuild the bridge if they really wanted that mixed use path?
Well, there isn't funding to do that.
Well, okay.
So, VDOT has suggested, and if you scroll down to the next slide, they've suggested a parallel bridge, that red line there, to be a shared use bike and pedestrian path. That is a separate bridge. A study was done 10 years ago to design and propose that a bike and pedestrian bridge get built there. However, while VDOT's suggestion is great, VDOT's not prepared to pay for it. So you could only build that additional bridge if you find some money.
I saw this rather elderly gentleman on TV last night who said that he was rebuilding bridges. Sorry, making a bad joke. What are the rules is the infrastructure bill affecting local projects like this, or is that something that's just way above what's happening here?
So the Infrastructure and Jobs Act has got so many grants and subdivisions in it. It also rolls over our previous funding legislation. What it's effectively done is slightly increased the amount of money available for everything that we do. So there's not one big pot. It's divided up among all the different funding sources throughout the country, funding streams rather. And so we will hope, and we haven't got the number yet, but we're hoping that our CMAC and STGB, that's congestion mitigation and air quality funding, and the Surface Transportation Block Grant funding will increase this year because of the IIJA. But we don't have the numbers yet, so I can't answer the question yet. We did see an increase in the smart scale funding, which I think you might, but yeah, you've got it on your agenda. So you'll see we've got projects and a lot more money that's around this smart scale than before. That's also coming out of there, etc. We will hear over the course of this year how much additional funding for each funding type there will be available, but it looks like it's increasing in each category by an amount.
Okay, so there's no new sources of funding then.
Well, there are new grants. So there is this grant called a mega grant, which they never had before. So the mega grant covers very big transportation infrastructure projects, and they just awarded, I can't think if it was 7 or 9 really big projects, really large amount of money last week. They included the B&O tunnel in Baltimore on the train line that has to be widened. It's 150 years old or something, the tunnel. That's one of their projects. There were 9 big projects nationwide. Another one was the deck in New York, connecting to the new tunnel that they're building to get into New York. So that deck around the Hudson Yards, that was also funded as one of the 9 projects. There were 7 others in Ohio. I think there's a bridge in Ohio that they're building across the river. I forget which one, and I can't recall the other projects. But those are all new grants. It's new money that's come out of the Infrastructure Jobs Act. Soundtrack's about $67 billion extra to upgrade all their infrastructure, plus roadways, bridges, tunnels everywhere. There's a lot.
I do like the idea of the separate bike and pedestrian bridge here, because technically you wouldn't necessarily have to have it at the same level as the Falmouth Bridge. You could connect Riverside Drive with King Street. I believe it's King Street over there on the Stafford side, so that you're connecting mixed use path with mixed use path, rather than trying to bring it on top and then spiral them down to connect to everything. So
in
that's
this case, the question will be finding money, because so far we don't have the money, and of course nobody's applied for it. And as you know, FAMPO cannot allocate funding to a project if a jurisdiction doesn't apply to us for funding. We may only fund projects that are properly designed in a study and that a jurisdiction requests funding for, we then allocate funding to. We've had no such request. And my understanding is the city and Stratford want to go back and negotiate with VDOT to try and find a way to put it on the bridge. So that's out of my hands, but I don't know what to say.
okay.
I just want to point out that due to flooding issues and ice flow, the Rappahannock, the Falmouth Bridge has been wiped out about 4 or 5 times in the last 100 years, so over 100 years. So it has to be high enough. As a matter of fact, in 1942, they were building the Falmouth Bridge and the piers were flooded. So they extended the piers 5 feet in height to avoid flooding in the future. So that's pretty much the lowest height you can have for the 100-year flood. So any other bridge, pedestrian bridge, doesn't get wiped out.
In terms of the item that you actually have on the agenda, I would say that I believe that the report has been adjusted to reflect the comments that you're making tonight about clarifying that, for example, that Rappahannock Bridge project is not being recommended to be built at the location which the modeling map shows you. I think it's quite clear, not unclear to me. I think there's a previous version of this report which left that unclear, and I think that the recommendation now is crystal clear at the end. If you look at that recommendation, there is no doubt in my mind that it has clarified what you're concerned about. And if you want to go and read it again, we can put that on the screen. It says very clearly that a separate study needs to be undertaken to investigate options, and that is what the recommendation of this report.
I'm going to stick with my recommendation. It is mentioned, it's very good down at page number 59 or what it is. But amplifying that paragraph of another sentence in that paragraph is not problematic, is not difficult. And if we make a motion to approve, I'm going to request that amendment be in there.
Sure. If you just give us the same style, we'll take it.
I would also like if there was any appendix to the studies, future studies, I'd like to see traffic count data and potential impacts to housing. Looking at a study, you have one study that might have, that says we could do this, but doesn't say how many houses are impacted. Then you have another option that has 0 houses impacted. So we need to know the potential of the impacts. And not only just housing impacts, but like grave sites and, things like that.
So I disagree in that, first of all, the level of this study is high level, has been mentioned very clearly. And throughout the study, it talks about what are the implications for existing waterways, bridges that are only two lanes instead of 4 lanes. The assessment of public and private properties. For example, if you widen Garrison Road, how much are you gonna have to spend, not how much, but the problems of buying parking lots and things as wide. All of that is addressed in there on the proper level. It's a high level document. It says all of these things are considerations for moving forward on any kind of project like this, without getting into the details, because there's no sense getting into all those level of details if the projects are not going to proceed anywhere.
They don't have the cost impacts.
There are cost estimates in the study. There are,
Cost impacts don't include acquisition of housing. So that, like the Trustwell Road project is, when you 4-lane and a trail and build a trail on a 2-lane road with houses on both sides, you're going to end up having to wipe out houses on one side of the road. And I counted it, 82 houses on one side of the road. So that's the potential. So those estimates, the cost estimates weren't in the study, and that's going to pretty much double the cost.
The recommendation page on the CTAC latest version of the study, one that you have 2 seconds ago on the screen.
In the agenda, correct?
Yep.
So, yeah, scroll down to the page we were looking at for the recommendations, it's 40 something. Look there, Trustwell Road is not there. No recommendation. This stage, design the widening of Trustwell Road, so it remains in the study as a high level recommendation. But no design is being done at this stage, which is why you don't have cost estimates when you land there. Design is not available.
But what I'm saying is in future data, when it comes out, I'd like to see that information presented to the committee.
Sure, if the county decides they wish to go further with that, of course a design would have to be done. That would have to count how many properties are affected and that do a cost estimate for the purchase of those property portions, etc. All of that would have to be done. You can't get funding from VDOT or from the Federal Highway Division without those numbers. So we can't proceed without that information.
Okay, I understand. I think one of the flaws of the study was that 13 east-west roads were evaluated. And the study basically had to make recommendations on improvements to each one to try to mitigate the impact. So I think that's kind of why Trustwell Road was put in there, because they had to demonstrate this is what we could do to it, but I just don't feel it's the right improvement.
Okay, I'd like to make a I don't make motions as chair, but I'd like to make a suggestion. So we're on page 39 now, right? Okay, so there is the caption of the photo of the drawing on page 20, where it says the alignment shown is representative for analysis. It does not represent a recommended corridor, yada yada. I think that perhaps we could add on page 39, after discussion of the Rappahannock River crossing, within the paragraph where it discusses that on 39, we just add the content of that caption and maybe just adjust it a little bit that says, any alignment shown in this study is representative for analysis. It does not represent a recommended corridor. Environmental and alternative analysis would determine an appropriate corridor and what adjacent roadways should directly connect to the crossing. It's the same thing as it says here, but it just hammers home one more time in the sort of conclusions here.
I'm thinking what Dave is saying, that is the redundancy wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, That's that, and I agree with that. Like, I think Ian's correct. It says it in the report. That's true. I think the redundancy clears it up even further, just so that there's fewer questions about it.
Repetition adds emphasis.
Thank you.
I will make that motion.
So
Okay.
Can I just
Go ahead.
clarify just for procedure? But you would not amend this document
Right.
now
Right.
in the meeting. What you need to do is say, we pass a resolution to recommend to the policy committee that they adopt this report, the following conditional sentence.
Yes.
That's what you do.
Yes.
Then we take that resolution from you, send it to the policy committee saying, CTAC supports the report with the following condition.
And with the explanation that we're adding that redundancy so that we can hammer home the point to
Move on.
further clarify.
You can put whatever you like in your resolution.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved.
So that's what I want to know the wording you can put in,
Yes. Well,
the exact wording.
so on page 20, there's the caption. First of all, there's a motion. Is there a second on the motion? Then we can do discussion.
I'll second that motion.
Second. Okay, so now we're in discussion right now. So on page 20, can we go to page 20 of the report real quick?
I believe it was actually 21.
It's,
Here you go.
it's
Yep.
For this, whichever.
oh,
issue
I see.
this is.
Okay, I was looking at the bottom of the page. It's 21 of, all right, anyway. So it says, the alignment shown is represented for analysis. Now, we're not referring to a photo, to a drawing in the conclusions there. I would just say, any alignment shown in this study is representative for analysis, and then go with the rest. It does not represent a recommended corridor.
And then in the resolution
I would
also.
just copy that, make that slight adjustment so that it's not referring to this drawing, stick it in there in next steps.
And adding to the resolution that the repetition is added for emphasis of the desires of CTAC.
Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay. I got a fun one for you. We're going to talk about business route signage in the region. And I brought this up at the last meeting more as just informational about how we do have some signage issues in the Fredericksburg region. And yep, here we go. Here we've got the, can we begin slideshow? So basically, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through some of the issues that we have. And then I'm going to present a couple of recommendations that we could do moving forward. All right. Little did you know this is going to come with a fun quiz. Can anyone tell me what this route is?
It's Route 1.
Anybody else?
Business,
Nope.
212.
alternate.
It's Interstate 95.
Oh.
Very good. All right.
All
Our main north-south corridor. But how about that north-south?
right. Route 1 business.
I've been burned before.
No, Route 1.
That's right. It's just Route 1.
Just
There
Route
you
1.
go.
The other one's business.
Yeah. All right. Our main east-west connector running through all three local jurisdictions right here.
Route 3.
That's Route 3. Exactly. How about this orange one? Coming from Port Royal in the southeast, going up to Warrenton in the northwest.
What's 17?
2.
That's 17, isn't it?
Ooh, see, this
Two and
is
17.
this is where I kind of get, this is where I got a little tricky, and sorry if I was a little deceitful here. It's actually nothing. It is Route 17 is the orange one there, and 17 business is the purple one. There is a concurrency of the routes for most of the purple line there of Route 2 and Business 17, but that's the thing. You'll see that it's not just drivers and locals of the region or people passing through. Even the city of Fredericksburg and VDOT have issues with signage in the region here. If you are crossing the Falmouth Bridge going south, you're presented with this older sign that's been up for a while here. saying that if you turn left onto Princess Anne Street, you're going to be on Route 1 South, Route 17 South, Route 2 South, and that if you go forward, you'll be on Alt 1 South. None of this is correct. None of this is correct. If you turn left, you're going to be on Business 1, Business 17. Route 2 doesn't even start at this intersection. It starts later on when you get down to William Street. And we don't have an Alt 1 South. Maybe that's what it was called back in the day when they put the sign up, but that's not what it is now. It's just simply 1 South. So to fix this, you would have to fix the whole thing. Business to Route 2 and say that it's Route 1 South. And maybe I'm just picky about this, but if you're from out of town and it says get on Route 1, you'd want to turn left to stay on Route 1, not to go straight. Just go through the intersection here, same intersection. It says you go to Route 3 if you stay on Emancipation Highway there, correct? It is Route 1 South, yes. It is not 17. It is not 2. That is wrong. They're lying to you. If you get on to Princess Anne, it says that you're on Business 1. That's correct. You're also on Business 17. That's missing from the sign. Our brand new Chatham Bridge, it says you're on 3. It doesn't say what direction you're going, and it doesn't tell you that it's actually 3 business. It is not just regular Route 3. It's kind of hard to see on the slide here, but this is the junction of Caroline Street, Princess Anne, Amelia, and William. You have Business 3, Business 1, Business 17, and Virginia Route 2 all converging in this area. If you try to look for one route shield in downtown Fredericksburg, you will not find it. They don't show any of them. Going down Tidewater Trail, you'll see a lot of this. It just says it's Route 17. Constantly missing the business. This one doesn't have north-south. Further on down, you go down to Benchmark. Everything's wrong here almost. It says you're on Business 2. That's not a real thing. It says you're on 17. It's really 17 Business. The only one that's correct is South 2. So if you're looking for that, you got the right sign there. It keeps happening. Kings Highway, it's Business 3, not Route 3. You go down to Bowling Green, you see all this, okay? I used to live in Bowling Green. In fact, we had, the signs were all wrong there, and I used to serve on the town council in Bowling Green, and we even took this to VDOT, and they came and fixed all the signs. They had to put up about 15 new signs in the area to get everything to be right. All this is correct, actually. It's just a mess, because if you're trying to just navigate, you have to be presented with some of this at 55 miles an hour. It's just a bit much to deal with. When they did the bypass of Spotsylvania Courthouse, it led to a realignment of Route 208. The remainder of Route 208 became Route 208 Business. Most of Route 208 Business is a 55 mile an hour, 2-lane country road without any businesses for large stretches of the highway. It's not much of a business route. It was just sort of like their way of saying old 208, without having to go to the bother of coming up with a new designation. So this is the fork in the road that I see right now. The easiest one, repair all of this, fix all the signs, make it right, and just get it so that we don't have these issues anymore. However, I'm also going to suggest that maybe we go down the route, and this could be something where this is a discussion with policy committee, but any sort of change to route numbering anywhere in Virginia goes before the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So what I'm going to suggest is something where we put together a package, run this by policy committee, and see if we send this to the Commonwealth Transportation Board for changes. And I'll just run through this. And so this is the current situation that we have in the area. I don't have everything. I do have insets of downtown Fredericksburg and some other places here, but this is what we have in the area. A lot of concurrencies where you have 2 routes on top of each other, the most notable of which is 2 and 17. You also have 95 and 17 together from exit 126 up to exit 133. You have several business routes in the area, Business 3, Business 1, Business 17. I will move on to downtown. There's a small section of Caroline and Princess Anne streets that are Business 1, Business 17, and Route 2. Route 2 ends at William Street. But you don't know that because you don't see the signs downtown. So you've got all that there. We'll move on. You also have the Falmouth Bridge is Business 17 and US 1. South of town, you've got this. You see the Country Road Business 208 on the left side there, and the Tidewater Trail concurrency up there in the northwest part. And then Bowling Green. You've got downtown Bowling Green, you've got Route 2, Business 207, Business 301. And then you've got an area where there's almost sort of like an exit down situation where the roads, that sign mess that you saw earlier, that was a lot down there in the southern part of town too. Suggestions? So, oh, go ahead, please. Oh, no, this is all over Virginia.
I know it's all. I mean, so you did.
Right, so the only, so the jurisdictions in our area that have any sort of business routing are Caroline, Spotsy, Stafford, and Fredericksburg. King George doesn't have any. Let me make sure. Yes, King George doesn't have it.
So the recommendation will be for all of the mess-ups?
My recommendation would be for that, but I would say that, again, that would sort of be the fork in the road. It's, do we talk about redesignation or do we just talk about fixing the signage? And that's something that I'm just going to present. I think either way you have to fix the signage, I would think. So I think that you're probably talking about something that is comparable.
I mean, I would say,
I think there'd be less signs if there's redesignation.
Yeah,
So
That's
it'd
true.
probably be a toss-up.
good point. You'll see that later on in the slideshow. All right, so designations available. Virginia route numbers for primary routes go up to 599. That's why you see in the classic Virginia kind of shield, like it's flat on top, rounded on the bottom, the classic Virginia primary shield, they can go up to 599. And then once you hit 600, that's when you've got the circular shield, and that's your county routes. The last in the sequence is 420. Then there's a couple of oddballs, but then there's really, you've got almost 200 different designations still available. So there's no shortage of that. So here's my first suggestion for the Fredericksburg area. Get rid of the concurrency with 2 in Business 17, extend 208 over to Interstate 95, getting rid of Business 17, a new designation for Business 3, and I just threw a number on there because it was one of the next numbers on there, and get rid of Business 1 along Lafayette Boulevard and just make it a continuous 208. Go ahead. Oh, yes, we go back.
sorry, what's the purpose of 17 being that way?
So 17, that was the only concurrency that I maintained in the area. And that's because if you've got a truck going down Warrenton Road from the northwest, going southeast towards the Hampton Roads area, you really don't want that truck to go downtown. So so in my suggestion here, I maintain the concurrency where it goes around town along 95, does the little jog over there at Massaponax and follows Mills Drive out to the east.
Okay.
Downtown cleaned up a lot. Caroline and Princess Anne just simply become 2. 208 gets extended down Lafayette Boulevard, and a new designation I just have as 422 right there because it was one of the next numbers in the thing there. And then you've got Route 3 and 218 extending on to Warrenton Road towards 95. Everything in this map only has a single designation. There isn't one road overlaid on top of another road. Same thing down here with the exception of US 17. Then a couple of different designations. You've got Mud Tavern Road, and I think it's called Stonewall Jackson Road in Caroline County. That was Route 606 and part of Business 208. Make it a primary route. It serves the new raceway. They got the Kalahari Resort coming in, connects Spotsy Courthouse to the interstate. It could be a primary route. And then in Bowling Green, Route 2 runs through town, the end, instead of all those, that mess of different designations. So if you ask the Commonwealth Transportation Board for 4 new designations, you could get a situation where you have no concurrent routes in the region anymore, with the exception of US 17, just because you have to continue to do that to keep the trucks from going down downtown Fredericksburg.
Can we look at 17 again?
Yeah. Here, I'll go to this one.
Okay, so
And I got the,
and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this stuff,
Sure.
because I'm moved to this region in the last 5 years, and I've done no research into highway numbers, but
let me just go to the current situation now. There we go.
no, I want to see your update.
Okay.
Looking at your updated one, wouldn't it make sense, because 17, the way I think of it in my head, as someone who lives off 17, wouldn't it make sense to make, I guess you have it as 218, that continuous 17, and then remove the route designation from 95, because 95 is 95, and then redesignate Spotsy's 17, or vice versa? I'm not.
That could be a thing too. I only had suggested that this remains 17 for through traffic trying to go through the area without trying to send them downtown. I think the only other option you could do is to do a concurrent route with 17 of 1 right there. But again, if you're trying to keep truck traffic, which is immense on Warrenton Road, less so to the southeast of town, but it's something to be thought about up here.
No,
that's why I suggested to keep it that way.
Well, my thinking with that is, isn't that based on the idea of what it is now, where business 17 goes through town, right?
Right.
So isn't that kind of based, if we're already redesignating B17, which is a bomber, isn't it? Business 17.
Yeah.
If we're already redesignating business 17, why not just drop the idea of a continuous 17 that goes, and this is an honest question, so
I can kind of explain. So what's going on here is basically river and bridge crossings, actually. So the reason why 17 cuts down and does that is that it needs a route in which it crosses the Rappahannock, because 17 is a very important river crossing down in the Gloucester, Yorktown area. It's a major bridge, as well as Route 3 is a major crossing of the Rappahannock down towards Kilmarnock, Whitestone area. And so Route 3 and separate 17 kind of diverge from the Tidewater area and basically come up 2 different peninsulas coming up. But as they're coming up, eventually, because 17 takes the lower one, it has to recross the river again. And so they designated it to be a shared merge pass for 95, because that in part keeps it out of the city traffic, as well as provides a bridge and river crossing at that particular.
it's kind of a bigger Virginia thing. Okay,
Yeah.
That's the explanation.
And also, the one thing with this is no interstate, certainly, and no primary US route like Route 1 non-business or Route 17 non-business would change. So you're also not changing the mileage on the control cities of all the different signs up and down the road. It now isn't a different mileage to get to Fredericksburg or Culpeper or Tappahannock.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
That would still be maintained. So that was the suggestion. So, and then I think the rest of the slides just kind of run through. Here we go. It just runs through back and forth like this, so you can kind of see it. And then downtown cleaned up the way it is now. To the south, cleaned up. And Bowling Green cleaned up. That's my suggestion. And I know it's a lot, and maybe it's just me being nitpicky, but at the very least, I do think that some of this does lead to driver confusion, especially when the signage is wrong. So if you're looking at 2 different options here, you could be just talking about repair, or if you really want to clean up and try to get rid of some of these concurrencies, you can talk about replace. So for instance, current situation here, south of the Falmouth Road, where everything's wrong, could be simplified to this. This ain't PowerPoint. This is me with paintbrush. Okay, so it's fine. So you could have fewer designations like this. All this mess that you have here on Tidewater Trail, you can just have Route 2. a business route going through the country in Spotsylvania can get cleaned up and just become two different routes like that. And then live in Bowling Green, now it's simpler. The end. So I think my suggestion would be, do you want to, so the signage for this stuff is either done by the city of Fredericksburg because they have their own signage that they do for routing like this. And then the counties are all done by VDOT. Is this just tell VDOT and city of Fredericksburg to fix their signage and get it right as it is currently now? Or do we go down a albeit more complicated route of talking about redesignation and getting rid of business routes? I present this as a thought, and I'm happy to hear your opinion.
I think it definitely needs to be simplified, but also be more appealing and like scenic designations and so forth, where there isn't so many signs. Don't have to be maintained, so forth. So I think in the long run, it's better to, redesignate and get it right than to keep putting Band-Aids on the situation.
I agree, and I especially think of, because Fredericksburg is kind of a midpoint between DC and Richmond, you do have a lot of people coming through for various reasons, which causes other problems. But I mean, who among us has not been on a road trip and you have to take a right on Route 45 and you have to okay, there's 5 different signs, which one is 45? I think there's tremendous value to that, but it's also not a pressing need, so it's worth taking the time to do that. So,
Yeah.
So what sort of action would we take right now?
I think, I don't think this is something, I don't know if it's proper to put in action, to say that we want to do something. I think that we would put it on as an action item for the next meeting, but this is more just informational right here. But I can just kind of get your sense on this right now, if you think that this is something that you want to move forward on, or if you're like, you've got too much time on your hands. Perhaps we just, I do want to hear the thoughts either way.
I can see it on the next meeting.
Okay.
I would think before we even consider taking action, we sit down with VDOT that are experts, and they say, oh, you change Route 1 business and remove that. There's federal funding that goes on with Route 1 business, not state funding. It may be a whole bunch of stuff we don't know about.
The only thing that I know about this, I don't know how, I could be getting some of this wrong, but I know that it's, I'll get the acronym wrong, but it's the American Association of State Highway.
ASHTO.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it was something that they were seeking to eventually talk about removing extraneous US routes where necessary and replace them with state routes. I don't have that with me right now, so I'm just saying that I have to bring the thing that says, that's something that I had seen before. I don't know, I can't tell you right now how that would affect funding. Because maybe it does, and then this is.
But I don't know, I threw that on as something but VDOT would know that we certainly wouldn't know, or I wouldn't expect.
That's fair.
I'd like to see, VDOT's input. So is there a way to ask for that input at this meeting?
And maybe that,
VDOT can get back to it at the next meeting.
Can we find out if removing a US business designation affects federal funding of the road?
Actually have a member from VDOT just tonight. So I would contact that person, say, can you bring one of your colleagues to please walk us through the process? They can give you a 10-minute presentation, and then you can ask them those questions, because you're going to think of additional questions.
Yeah.
Like on my studies, literally 20 people in the room that think of a new. So get them in the room, then you can ask additional questions, because you're just going to think, oh, what about that other thing? And I think David writes, let's ask VDOT to come sit right here. It might take them 10 minutes.
From the last
Please
meeting.
invite them.
Ask VDOT to attend. Item.
And I'll be honest with you, Fredericksburg isn't even the worst place. If you've ever been to Williamsburg and tried to navigate down there with all the different routes and how you have to take 10 turns to stay on the same road, we've got better than that. I'm just saying that it could be better here. So thank you for humoring me on this, and
I think it's worth discussion and worth consideration for sure.
Yeah.
When I ask what the
Yeah.
next step is, I just like, do I just listen to this nice presentation and then, start tuning it and then, okay, cool, moving on?
I think assuming that there isn't any sort of critical funding loss, or if they don't come back and say like, oh well, we're going to have to do a study to figure out how this would affect the traffic flow in the area, and that it's going to cost some exorbitant amount of money, then then this is something that we could think about. But I think it's something that we can talk about.
Somewhere else in the state. So because that would be the precedence for doing it here. I mean, because
I'm trying to think if that's been done. I mean, there's definitely route redesignation every once in a while, but I'm trying to think if there's ever been a time where they just cleaned out business routes. And I don't recall that. It's not to say that it's never happened, but I can't recall one right now.
I know when the Blue Gray Parkway was built, they redid Route 3.
Right, because it used to be where Business 3 is now. I did think of one. In Lynchburg, they had 29 and Business 29. And then they built another bypass 29. So they really didn't want to have 3 29s. So they took the old Business 29 and made it Virginia 163. And then they made 29 Business 29, and they made the new route 29. So there has been shifting before, but not necessarily to get rid of business routes. Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And hopefully our VDOT person can talk about that.
The other question I would have is impact on mapping. So you talked about how you're teaching people how to get around.
Yeah.
People who are still using physical maps, those physical maps.
They're all out of date at that point. Exactly. Yeah. But
No one does that? Okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, really? Okay.
GPS would be different, because when they do make these changes and they know that the changes are coming, then they can, Google and Bing and Apple, they can all make those changes. And as long as they're made aware of that ahead of time.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I've got nothing else on that. So why don't we move to 7A, the TAC and Policy Committee updates.
Okay, I'll go through these fairly quickly. Actually, a lot of what both the TAC and Policy Committee discussed at their meetings is also further down in staff reports. So Kai, why don't you go ahead and pull up the TAC and Policy agenda? And for the most part, the Technical Advisory Committee also had their East-West Mobility Study report kind of update, as well as that they actually approved or recommended for adoption to the Policy Committee at that point in time. The Policy Committee was updated on it, as well as received more information as far as the survey that went along with the East-West Mobility Study, and a fair amount of public comment was made at that point in time. For the TAC agenda, they also were updated. Ian updated the TAC on the Senate Bill 1137, which was a proposal to create a Fredericksburg Transit Authority or Transportation Authority. It was it was voted down in the Virginia Senate. What it was going to do is currently, there's basically real estate taxes that are taken out of this region. Currently, they're going actually to Hampton Roads for their transportation authority. And that bill sought to kind of bring that back into the region through this new authority, as well as redistribute some of that money back to the jurisdictions. But that did not happen. If you
Can we take a pause on that real quick?
Because actually, it's all the article on the paper. You talked about how the bill was kind of like
a forewarning.
Zero communication with anyone. Around because Bob Schneider from PRTC sent me an email and said, by the way, have you seen this? And that's the first word about it. The Chamber of Commerce knew nothing about it. And GWRC knew nothing about it. The senator is not from our region. He's from Manassas and Prince William and all that kind of thing. So we did go on WRC, and I drove down, met with them. And he said it had to be done in a hurry because the Senate only sits for 6 weeks. Sorry, yes, well, the whole legislature only sits for 6 weeks this year. And so they have to get everything in those 6 weeks, otherwise they lose out until next year. And so he admitted it was done in somewhat of a rush. We just recommended to him that he at least communicate with key stakeholders in the region because it's likely to get opposition. Don't even know that it's coming and it hits them out of the blue. I think what happened, and so it failed. It came out of committee, so that had committee support from the Finance and Appropriations Committee. In the Senate, it failed by one vote to get the majority of needed passed. 20 to 18 and at least 21 votes to pass the Senate to move to the House. But it's fallen off now, and
I just thought that was an interesting turn of events.
we had the same thing with Josh Cole's bill last year. There were two bills actually. We had an initial bill, which was then withdrawn and replaced by a committee bill, which then failed in the session as well. So it seems as though there's an interest in the legislature in reducing this party, but it also seems like legislators are not all that keen on discussing it with the people that it's going to impact, which I think is remarkably short-sighted. But it's just my personal fact. It's not fact. But it doesn't have an opinion because it happened before we could have a meeting.
Is there some action CTAC could take for the next legislative session in advance to, or is that, I guess we're trying to stay nonpartisan, but.
The next session is in January. So
No, I know. Yeah, no, I'm thinking, so could it be something we like bookmark for, say, starting in October, like trying to raise public awareness of this possibility?
Well, I think that FAMPO as a group, all four committees of FAMPO really need to think about what our future funding projects in the region should be. Because that will give us a collective joint. And when these things spring out of nowhere, we can quickly respond because we know what we think about these sorts of things. And then we can look at a new one that arrives and say, yeah, we like it, or no, we don't like it straight away because we know what we collectively think. I think that we don't have an official opinion as a group. And I think it's important for us to do that. So I'm going to propose in about either April or May that the policy committee has a discussion or forms a subcommittee of committees to talk through, like, how are we going to fund our future projects? We have $2.6 billion worth of projects in the long range plan right now. And this East-West study that you just recommended recommends generally another set of projects, which are another $1 billion. That's $3.6 billion worth of projects. We don't have the money to fund $3.6 billion worth of. So we would have to have a discussion about how are we going to prioritize total what we do in the future, and then how are we going to raise the money for those things that we think are priorities. We do that generally, but I think we need a more focused discussion about, do we think an RTA is a good idea? I don't know what the FAMPO opinion is of that officially, because we don't have an official opinion. And do we want to consider it or don't we? But if we decide we want to consider it, then there's a whole lot of detail. Which form of taxation are we okay with, and which form are we not okay with? This bill of his has some good things in it, I think, because it talks about bringing back existing taxes, which are currently taken from our region and paid over to the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. But it's our money, right? The recordation tax. It's $15 million a year. It's raised here from property owners in this region, and the state taxes that amount, and then doesn't bring it back to the region. They give it to Hampton Roads to build their highways. Doesn't seem fair. So that part of the bill, I think has some merit. But we don't have a collective opinion, so I think we should in the future set aside some time to think about, is this a good idea or isn't it? Just one person, you, now 4 committees, we have 100 people, so we need to find out what those 100 people think.
Thank you.
Okay, kind of if you would scroll down, speaking of funding, I provided an update about the SPAC STBG process for the tax. So we let them know that we've identified anywhere between just under 3 million to just over $3.7 million of existing projects that will be first in line for the fiscal year 28-29 call for projects funding list. So the current methodology for those two funding pots, say if we have any unfunded requests currently on the books, we fill those pots first before we spend that money on existing projects. So we identified the existing projects in that for this round that would basically dictate how much money was going to be available for the projects that they submitted last November. I'll speak on Smart Scale a little bit, and then our congestion management plan performance monitoring. Becky provided an update that shows that we actually have some tools online that show the maps to tell you how and track the congestion management portion of the projects throughout the region. So she displayed those maps up for the subcommittee. And finally, with the air quality conformity analysis, we are going to be opening, working with VDOT in Richmond and their air quality conformity group to open up a public participation process for their round for the upcoming TIP. So that rounds out the TAC agenda. The the policy committee, again, they received a lot of the similar information. They did have a presentation from the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, as well as the update on the East-West Mobility Study. They also received the new river crossings research update, which I'm going to provide in a little while, Smart Scale, and some TIP activities. Ian also provided a re-review of a older I-95 corridor study just for the policy committee that was requested by a member of the policy committee. So that sums up the activities based on that. We can go ahead to 7B if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'll
let's
run through this.
Urban polygons.
So the census has basically released our new urban areas. We can just go ahead, cut to the chase there. So one quick update is that the methodology for defining the urban areas has changed from 2010. So it's actually a little bit different. So this isn't, you can't quite pull a direct apples to apples. This is definitely an apples to oranges comparison here, but it's how our urban area is defined. And so the Fredericksburg area is the one that's around primarily the city in this corridor here, including Spotsylvania and Southern Stafford. Up towards Garrisonville Road up here, this is actually within the Washington, D.C. Urbanized area. So we actually have two urbanized areas within our MPO jurisdiction. This isn't completely uncommon, this does exist, but basically Stafford is basically elected to stay in the FAMPO MPO at a previous decision rather than to potentially join. Some counties actually do kind of split the area on the MPOs that they are a part of. Chesterfield County and the Richmond and Petersburg, different MPOs is an example of that. However, in our time here, our MPO has grown. You can actually see one little interesting thing with the methodology change is that you now, in the old rule, if an urbanized area kind of completely surrounds a census parcel, it would be lumped in with the MPO. In the new round, that's no longer the case, so it can actually remain out. So the battlefield area of Spotsylvania County, it drops out of the MPO. But probably the most interesting thing that's happening right now is one, whether or not the two urbanized areas are eventually going to join. That will actually have later policy implications if that ever happens. However, probably the biggest shock is that right now our MPO actually extends to our MPO's urbanized area now extends to the Caroline County line in Spotsylvania. Basically, this is New Post having its effect as an urban development out there. It kind of takes the whole census block group area here. So if it block group goes to the line, it goes to the line as well. And the interesting note here is that if Caroline County basically approves and has the development on this area that would trigger that to become an urbanized area, they would join the MPO. Right now, they're not required to join the MPO. If it jumps across the county line, they will automatically be included. They can't opt out at that point in time. So that is one item to kind of watch, is that actually we've been waiting for this little part to connect up here, but this actually might be the area that joins first that would actually change the MPO's kind of makeup within the region.
So I don't think that part is gonna connect in Stafford, because you have the airport there with the fly zones, and you have the landfill, so you don't wanna urbanize that area.
It's not just the actual parcels, it's the block, the census designated boundaries here. So it can snake around, but as long as those little block groups connect, it could trigger it. So it's probably, I would say eventually it's going to probably connect, but for right now, it's not connected. 10 years.
Makes those maps up.
We made these maps based off the census definition. So we're basically pulling what the census says and we produce these maps. So Connor's the GIS map maker.
Most of that area is light industrial or everything.
Yeah.
No, those,
Oh.
so what you see for each one was taken off the US Census Bureau's
Yeah.
website.
But
Just made it into the maps that.
even if it's light industrial, it slowly counts because it basically is looking for pavement or impervious surface.
Well, you definitely have a lot of light industrial that's going in right there on the Route 1 corridor near the airport, so.
So as soon as that triggers, there will be additional changes. So that kind of concludes. Oh, last slide, we'll just show you, we gained about a little bit over 30,000 in population. This urbanized area definition is a lot more strenuous. We still added a lot of growth. Some other MPOs were actually looking at population reduction as a result because their growth rates weren't keeping up with how rigorous and kind of how the census tightened up some of the requirements here. So that concludes the new urbanized area census update. Next up is the Freight Summit report. That is now available online. You can go ahead, jump to that, Connor. So the Cambridge Systematics, the consultants have basically generated their report along with a lot of MPO work going in behind the scenes. Kind of the big takeaways of this freight report is, number one, we're the biggest bottleneck in freight in the entire entirety of Virginia. Number two, our roadways have the highest amount of freight trucks, number of vehicles, than any place else in Virginia. And as a result, we have the biggest delays happening. This has actually been a kind of a point that we've been working with the Office of, what is it, OIP, Office of yeah, thank you. Intermodal Planning and Investment, is that traditionally when we were looking at freight metrics, they go by tonnage. Well, a lot of times, at least on our roadways, a truck is a truck. It might have heavy things like rocks, or it might have light things of, say, small laptops. For us, we see a truck as a truck as a truck, but they kind of go by tonnage. So a lot of their funding and scoring mechanisms to develop the SMART scale and other mechanisms of funding was looking at tonnage. So we were kind of at a slight disadvantage, say, to other areas in the state. I think with our work in part with this report and bugging OIP and their staff members, that I think we're making headway of slowly changing and having them listening to some of the other metrics that are involved. But if you would like, that report is now available. It was a partnership with Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, and it basically included kind of a sit-down workshop, a summit, so to speak, with freight partners. One thing we did learn in this is that getting in contact with freight companies to provide their opinions on things, incredibly difficult, like astronomically beyond reason difficult. So we had a smaller focus group than we wanted, but it wasn't completely outside of what I would say my previous experiences dealing with freight companies. It's tough.
But we had enough participation.
We had, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say representative, but we got some good feedback, particularly in very specific entities, such as knowing that there's a grocery store chain currently has a facility warehouse in here that's delivering to everywhere from points in Northern Virginia DC, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. They do not technically have a store in the Fredericksburg area, but their distribution warehouse is, and they send everything up. So we got feedback along those lines, as well as costs and some operational items. So you can, when you're ever feeling sleepy, feel free to,
Connor, just scroll down to the list of projects.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had everybody from the Port of Virginia to IDX, Harris Teeter's, the grocery store. We had some furniture delivery folks, some other kind of small haulers. We had representatives from the counties, the jurisdictions. So it allowed for a very kind of a deep dive into some of the problems. Like for them, it was, the cost of shipping containers were going to be a lot bigger driver on some of their activities than say the congestion would be, or at least depending on the freight entity involved. So when they're talking about costs and everything, sometimes, a delay isn't going to be the worst thing for them, but if it's something where they're looking that they have to just get, like, they don't have the capacity because shipping containers went from $4,000 a container to ship across, say, a certain distance to well over $20,000. So they were seeing huge cost fluctuations. And so that was an item that was identified. So I'll leave that as the freight summary. On to the Smart Scale Round 5 review. In case you haven't noticed, our region did extremely well. Let's go ahead, scroll down to it. Let's just go down to our projects. So this is a statewide competitive process, recommended funded projects for the Virginia District. So in this process, our localities got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects funded. They were the applicants in this case for a lot of different items. GWRC and FAMPO kind of team up to be able to submit projects because GWRC can submit a project, FAMPO can submit a project, so we coordinate to try to maximize the number of projects we can submit. We were able to pull in 5 projects, and if you look at kind of the comparison to previous rounds, this is actually one of the best rounds as far as receiving funding, particularly if you threw out the one small outlier from round 1, that's the southbound Rappahannock River crossing that kind of blows the budget out. But
Dave has a question.
But we basically pulled in one of our largest hauls as far as this competitive process is for this round of projects. Yes.
Would you prefer questions remain till the end?
I was just trying to get to the end of the sentence, but go ahead.
Well, because my question was on the previous.
Oh yeah, we can go back. Not a problem.
So anyway, so it's interesting, this recommended project, Fredericksburg District in this instance for some people, fine or whatever, does not equate to FAMPO because you can see there's many counties on there that are not FAMPO or even GWRC. So,
it's a Fredericksburg VDOT district.
yeah.
So it goes all the way down the
different, like, that threw me off at first. Thinking, what's all this about? So, yeah. And then the red stars are the ones that were GWRC and Fredericksburg, and the gold ones were the ones submitted by the
jurisdictions,
the district, the community, the state, the county, and the city.
Correct.
If you look at it, it is 48.5 million with the FAMPO and GWRC projects, regionally 100 million of the localities projects in the region. So that's 150 million almost of projects. That is a huge amount of cash. Some of that IIJ Infrastructure Act. We've got 150 million of it coming to our region to build. And there's 39 million there just to widen Garrisonville Road in Stafford County, right? That's a massive project, building another lane either side on that particular roadway. Bike paths, there's the Route 2, the section of Dixon Road that narrows to 2 lanes. It's all going to now be widened so that it is all 4 lanes. Instead of the route narrowing the bottleneck, it's going to widen it. At the same time, it's going to put a sidewalk and a bike path in there. So you're doing multiple things at the same time, which often saves costs if you do it all at once. So there's a great number of turning lanes and bike paths and sidewalks and all kinds of things in there, which we really need And often people say, we build a sidewalk to nowhere. Right? A lot of these projects, we design specifically to fill in the gaps. So we're filling in those gaps. So you don't have a road that suddenly narrows for no reason. You don't have a BCR trail that suddenly peters out because somebody forgot to build the middle section. We build it in now. So the BCR trail will go all the way from the I-95 all the way across the Chatham Bridge into Stafford County. That project you were all concerned about earlier carries it on up the hill in up Chatham Heights Road, which means it is a huge regional project now. And that particular project was funded not out of the district budget for smart scale, it was funded out of the state budget. So the state representatives have now decided that this is a regionally important project that they want to fund. And they've given us $16 million to take it to the next level. That's a huge statement of faith in FAMPO and GWRC and in our region, and a commitment to active transportation, getting people walking, getting people cycling, getting people outdoors. It's great. It's a great list of projects.
When did they submit these projects for this? When did it submit this?
August, it's July last year.
July last year. And how far out are they determined? Or
They take up to 7 years before they actually give us the cash.
still a few years out from getting started?
However, you will see next later this year or early next year that we should have waited 7 years for. They brought forward because of the Infrastructure Jobs Act, and we're getting them built years earlier. So the traffic circles on Lafayette Boulevard are going to be put in 2 years earlier than what the funding would have been because we've got extra cash.
The ones right out here?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
they're going to come earlier than planned.
Okay. Is there any way to know what the locality's average share of the funding is versus state funding? You know that?
Just to rephrase the question,
The localities are putting in money for these projects
oh yes, the
to
local.
make this the smart scale.
Yeah, I understand. So you'd have to go to each application, but we do have that information and get it to you. These slides already got so much detail in that we find that if we give people too much information, then the meeting goes on for hours and they're all bored by the time we get to the end of it. So we don't give you like every little detail, but we have each of the applications for the regional projects. So the FAMPO projects and the GWRC projects are here on our computer, and we can actually give you that information. Well, we call it the local match. So we can tell you what the local match is. Carrie, one of our staff, will be able to let you know. If you just pop us an email, we'll send it to you. But we didn't put it in the presentation. But there is the Garrisonville Road one, because there was such a lot of local match. The state basically was almost obliged to score it highly unfunded. I think there's already 30 million on the project, and they've given another 39 million. So.
Okay. Now, the GWRC recommends projects for the funding. Is there a citizens committee on the GWRC, or?
No.
But could we have a look at what projects they move forward before they actually go in the smart scale?
You can. They present. What we do is that the FAMPO staff prepares the projects for the FAMPO submission list and for the GWRC submission list, because we do them together. And before those projects are submitted, they are presented to the FAMPO committees at least twice. And then we start off with 10 projects, 5 for FAMPO, 5 for GWRC. We bring those lists all to the committees. If you go back on the website, you'll go back to the meetings where we presented them here in this meeting. And then we came back some months later to ask for one project in each category to be removed, because you're only allowed to submit 4 on each list finally. So you have to remove one. That discussion happens at the policy committee and at the GWRC board. But it runs through all 4 FAMPO committees and the GWRC board at least twice, and usually about 4 times before the final decision is made. So if you go back on the agendas of those meetings in the past 12 months, you'll see all those presentations. We brought them to the committees, the committee discussed them.
I just like to get as much information as possible before we make a decision.
The next round will start in September, so we'll go through it with you all over again for the next round.
Okay.
But we get another 100.
That's a step funded mean. Right, Colin? Yeah,
Step funded.
That step funded mean?
There's twos and ones.
I actually don't know.
Okay.
Carrie is the expert, but she's not here. So I've just forgotten what that is. Smart scale score is the important thing there.
Yeah, I see the scores, yeah.
And then whether or not they approved it. Also, just to point out, this is the recommended funding. It's not the final funding.
It's gotta be voted, yeah.
Because the CTB members still have to weigh into the discussion, and they are able to add a project or remove a project or increase the funding or reduce the funding within certain rules, right? They're not allowed to change more than 10%. They're not allowed to do, so there's certain rules about what they're allowed to do. Our CTB member from our region is busy in discussion with the BDOT district to talk about the projects and see whether they're happy with them and whether they like to add or subtract from the list. But I have to say, it
Seems to correlate with regional.
CTB
Everything's regional.
and already recommended.
See, middle Peninsula.
So the chances are that that's.
WRC is two, and then the
Notice that yesterday's
county
staff
cities are the ones that look
they
like.
had a presentation on Enon Road.
I don't know what that implies for.
2020, the project was supposed to
Find
be
out.
10 million.
Notice the top two scores.
Then it went up to like 12 million.
These are our cuts.
Now, all of a sudden, it's 24.6 million.
Mhm.
So that's more than doubled in 3 years. And so the funding just isn't there. So how does something like that proceed?
Smart scale, if you just scroll up, Connor, to the statewide funding, they are.
Next one down.
There is an amount of money set aside here. That 76 million there is designated just for inflationary cost increases. So that amount can still be allocated to take care of cost increases. And then over here, we have a 90 million that's not allocated to anything. This 90 million, the CTB has to decide whether they're going to give it out now to additional projects, so we might get one more project, or to keep it in the pot so that they can deal with the cost increases. If it goes over these amounts, then they have to negotiate with the county or the city to say, well, we've given you 20 million, can you come up with 100,000 or whatever, so that there is a possibility that it won't cover every increase because of that. But the Garrisonville Road widening is a case in point. It doubled in price. And so they had to find another 39 million. And luckily, the state has now coughed up the 39 million cost increase and paid for it. So it's now made whole again.
Is that, were you done with the? Any other questions? All right, moving on to the river crossing research update.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
No,
Oh, yeah.
no, pull it back.
Okay, so here's what this triggered me to do is I wanted to look at, I got questions that, this is round 5.
Correct.
So I was trying to figure out, well, what's the status of projects we did in round 1, 2, 3, and 4? Only the funded ones, obviously, want to prove it. So I look up on VDOT and I find the scorecards for the projects in round 1. Well, that's dated 2017 and it says, it doesn't say that they're constructed, they're in engineering. Do you have some sort of a cheat sheet or something, lists the 5 projects? I mean, it'd be like half a paragraph on each one. The paragraph what it does,
Scroll down, but yes. So
and then what the stats is.
once they're in the transportation improvement plan. So they will eventually work their way in, and then that will start breaking it down based on the year.
Okay, but no, I'm going back to 2017.
They also, well, yes, and they also, if you go onto VDOT's website, they have their little, it's almost like a car dashboard that will, if you know the project ID, you can put it in to see what stage and,
Okay, so you don't have some, yeah, okay.
yeah.
Something that's
And we don't build,
kind of useful for
yeah,
guys like us, all right?
but
So there are three places you can look. John is quite correct. On the VDOT website. Also, you can look in our TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is on our website. It tells you funded. If it's not in the FAMPO TIP and it's in our region, it means it's not funded. So if it's funded, it'll be in the TIP, and then you'll see the year by year what's going on. And the final thing you can look at is our CMAC and SDTD list, which is also on the website. And we're busy updating that now because we're going to fund probably another 12 million of our CMAC and SDTD money this year. That list has got what we call the UBC, the Unique Project Code.
Right.
And by UBC, it tells you the project and it tells you which year there's going to be progress. So the construction year is in there, and it'll tell us, because we sometimes put additional money on a project, it tells us as FAMPO when we need to give that project money, because it tells us when it's. There are three phases. They have the PE phase, which is the design of the actual bridge and the building, and then there's the construction.
Right away, because you have to have the PE to know what the right of way is, and
You
then
do the right of way, and then you do the construction, and those three phases each have money associated with that phase, and those are also. But also we can bombard you with information. So you tell us next meeting, bring us a list of this. We'll find it for you, but just everything we add onto your agenda makes your meeting longer. So you tell us what the headings for you, and then we'll give them to you.
I was thinking that you already tracking the projects by project, the ones that affect us. You already, I mean, it was something you kept, and it's like a cheat sheet. I mean, any project manager, hey, we got these projects going on, and here's where they stand, here they stand. You could just make copies and give them to us, but okay.
We
So
do,
I don't want a whole briefing back from one to.
Yeah, VDOT, fortunately, doesn't give us regular updates because we're not the client. Remember I said earlier, FAMPO doesn't build anything. So the client to VDOT is Stafford County.
But you are the administrative staff for the committee,
We have to,
supporting the committee.
we have to push, if you look at the TAC agenda, you'll see an item that I've added to the TAC agenda, which is tell us when the project cost increases occur so that we know, because VDOT doesn't tell us, they tell the client, and the client is the county or the city. And I've added another line onto that agenda which says, tell us if you've got new projects that we don't know about. Because they do a thing called revenue sharing, where they don't use FAMPO money, they use county money and they use VDOT. And then they're not obligated to tell FAMPO unless they want it in the TIP.
Yeah.
So the projects pop out of the woodwork. Spotsylvania County is taking out the bump outs on Route 3, for example. It's funded by the state. It's in the state transportation improvement plan. But we don't know about it as FAMPO staff because it's not in any of our documents, right?
Yeah.
So we're in the same position as you do. We have to guess because they don't tell us. So I'm trying to force them to tell us more information so that we're not in the dark and that we find this information out. And it's like pulling teeth. I can tell you, Susan sat here from VDOT and said, I'm not doing that every month. So
quietly, the tip is the cheat sheet. The trick is it's a very big document to be a cheat sheet because it lists every single project that's going on in the region that has federal funding. I know it, but that's
All right,
so.
no, I'm done.
Okay, 70.
All right, like the tag and the Avengers move.
I know what you're.
But everybody's waiting. Okay, so before you was a presentation made to the policy committee about the river crossing research process. This is again after a request by the County of Stafford and the City of Fredericksburg to look at a potential river crossing west of 95. And so we can go to the next slide. I actually could actually do it. So where we are, staff has begun research into a potential western river crossing. From the TAC members, we have called together a small working group of FAMPO staff, FAMPO jurisdiction staff, and VDOT to conduct research. This includes the Virginia Outdoor Foundation because they are a designated easement holder by the city of Fredericksburg. So they are basically acting as an agent of the city of Fredericksburg, but they have their own board that also makes decisions. Quick caveat, this is not an engineering or environmental study involving NEPA. That's a completely additional next process. And the
Not the committee of FAMPO.
Yeah.
It is a staff group that is just meeting to try and find out the information that.
Right. And the research will be presented to the TAC and Policy Committee as an ongoing basis. As of this point, the staff working group has met twice. So we've been doing an analysis of traffic flows. We're basically doing a gravity model of origin and destinations to try to determine whether or not that this river crossing has the demand to take it to an additional level of review. We're using big data. So this is what we're using with our streetlight data. It's doing as these are not one-to-one traffic counts. What we're trying to do is take a representative sample to determine, okay, how much of the percentage, so we can compare percentages of where people are going based on the census groups. Again, it is not an actual traffic count because that's a whole different level of study, but this is more akin to what, say, a fast food chain will use to determine its store locations based on data and trip patterns happening around it at the high level. So we're using this as an OD tool so that we know if you're going from one location to another location, okay, where's that happening? So we've used this in previous other planning studies. So this isn't a completely new tool, but we're doing it we told Streetlight to say, tell us every single trip going within the study area, which includes Stafford, City of Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, but we're also including Culpeper, King George, I think Caroline counties as well. So we've actually kind of expanded a little bit further out that every single time a potential trip crosses a river, we're using the current bridges as gates. So every single time that the streetlight data basically pings that somebody's crossing the river, we kind of can take that little bit of data. We're also specifying that they have to stay in the region. So if they are going from Spotsylvania to Washington, D.C., nope, not kicking that one out. However, it's going to not catch all trip changings. I'll use the best case example. For example, my son and I decided that because we live in Stafford, we needed to go to the bank located in the city of Fredericksburg. We went to the bank of the city of Fredericksburg, so that counts as a trip through that chain. The next stop was the Lego store all the way up in Potomac Mills. So all of a sudden, that trip that I make crosses outside the region, doesn't count anymore. And then when I came back, of course, I didn't cross any of the bridges because I'm coming north back from Prince William all the way down to Stafford. So again, not a trip crossing the river, so that kind of gets up. So it's going to end up to unequal trip distributions because it's kind of counting that type of sensitivity within its analysis zone. So we're looking at to see where are folks from our region who are crossing the river, where are they going? So looking at the southbound, those from Stafford, and actually it includes points further north, and I think King George is also included. I'm sorry. Only Stafford. Yes, thank you. I was like looking at it. Okay, good.
Would you like to zoom that in a little bit more, please?
Sure. We will get to that. Yeah. So trips coming into Stafford are trips generated in Stafford going south, and that includes going to Culpeper, Orange, Spotsylvania, and Caroline County. They are generally crossing the river and going to the Central Park area. So the biggest two destinations are the Central Park. We have a zoom in slide there. Are going from Stafford to Central Park, Spotsylvania Town Center. The next biggest one is actually the hospital, followed by the downtown area. Where's number 5? Number 5 is kind of the East Route 3 corridor. Number 6 is further out Route 17. And we can see that generated that, generally speaking, people from Stafford are basically going right next to 95. We do see some trips being generated, but in comparison to kind of Spotsylvania folks going north, if you're from Stafford or coming from Stafford going south, your trips are much more consolidated within this general area. Trips from Spotsylvania going north, a little bit more dispersed. That's one of the patterns that we notice. But if you are going north, you're basically going to areas along 17 west of 95. So you're seeing this corridor just north of 17 being the primary trip generator. Number two, Ferry Farm / the Walmart is the next biggest thing. And I say the Ferry Farm neighborhood, not the actual historical place. It's just that block group there because Walmart is generated in there. Followed by actually kind of south of 17, closest to the river. And then you can see it kind of dispersing a little bit further out from a couple of these other areas. So there is a very clear trip pattern that's happening west of 95 that's generating traffic from Stafford going south, as well as from Spotsylvania going north along these corridors. So from this travel on the streetlight basis, at least at some level, there is trip flow happening between points west of 95 between the two counties that are actually happening in a very small distance, straight line distance from each other, but a very complex actual road or network distance from each other. So the streetlight data generally suggests that between all of our traffic in our region between the counties, I think it's 34% are happening basically in this area, just north and south of the river, very short trips. And that's very significant because we're counting everybody who's going from Spotsylvania up to Quantico or going out to King George or Caroline County or Culpeper, depending on the split. So we're seeing a large amount of volume happening on that level.
So what you're saying is the population centers and destination centers
People
are crossing the river primarily on the west side of 95.
Yeah, their destinations for each side are generally west of 95, right along. Basically, they're going from the Southern Gateway area here along 17 to the west of 95 on Route 3.
Just go up one slide.
I also want to point out there's about 3,000 approved residential lots that will probably be built within the next 10 years on the west side of 95 between the Rappahannock River and Able Lake.
One thing that I want to point out to you, do you see any green out here, Culpeper and Orange County? There's none, right? There are trips there. They're like a relative small number of trips. They are going there. It's small numbers. And this, for my thinking, was why I was quite concerned about building this outer connector to Culpeper, because the number of people you're serving is a small number. Whereas here, look how dark green it is. That relatively
You're asking
people are being served if you put infrastructure here. There are people going other places. So 4, and then you saw in the previous map the people going here to the Walmart, right? But there are 3 bridges for them to get there. There are options, multiple options to get there. There are not multiple options that link these areas with those areas in southern Stafford.
Do we have data on what routes they're taking?
We don't track their full routes. We look at the origins and the destinations, where they get into the vehicle and where they get out of the vehicle. That's what we're looking at in this particular study.
Is it possible to get that? Because I'm thinking about it. I live in the dark green in Stafford, and I go to this dark green in Fredericksburg. So I'm a data point or a datum in this report.
Absolutely.
And I personally refuse to take 95.
Yes.
Because people drive like idiots on 95.
So how do you get there?
I take Route 1.
See, so the point is you have to cross I-95 in order to go south.
to avoid 95, you have to
You've
interact.
got to go under it or whatever, over
Right.
it to get to 1. Then you've got to cross 1, and then you've got to cross under or over I-95 to get back again. So you're doing what they call the inverted C, right? In this region, we have this inverted C where people go down, cross, and go back up again in order to get to, say, Wegmans. And that is that is one of the patterns that we know about already. Everybody knows, VDOT knows, everybody knows. And that is what's coming out of the study. One of the things that we need to bear in mind, and John will take you through the next slides, which will show you the numbers.
So basically, you have to drive east and west in order to go north and south.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I asked that question is because first off, I'll say now, I'm fully supportive of a west of 95 bridge crossing, but I guess the thing to me is that I'm thinking of counter arguments to this idea, and the counter argument is we just expanded 95. We can use that. So that's why I'm asking about the data of which route people take. I know I personally take Route 1, but am I weird, or are there other people who do that as well? And so having that data could be valuable in rebutting the argument of, well, we just massively expanded 95, that should be able to handle any traffic you need.
Yeah, and I'm the flip side of that. So now that they opened up the new southbound bridge, I live in Fredericksburg. I work at Stafford Courthouse, and I used to exclusively take Route 1. Now I find myself taking 95 more often because it's not nearly as congested as it was. So then, yeah, so I can.
So the problem is that 95, well, there are a number of problems, but one of the problems is that 95, we have, to an extent in our region, put all our eggs in one basket. And John will tell you from the tracks that you saw earlier, that we have the worst bottleneck in the state of Virginia because we've done that. So by opting to widen and widen and widen 95, we put all the eggs on 95. And if an oil tanker explodes on I-95, you can forget about your next 2 days, right? Your next 2 days are staying home. You're not going to go anywhere because what happens, and you can watch this, if you've got those apps on your phone and you watch the traffic patterns, you remember the snowstorm where the senator, a federal senator, sat on a highway I-95 for 27 hours, right? This news story focused on, oh my God, these people sat for so long on I-95. What the news story didn't talk about is what happened to our region on those days. You couldn't move anywhere. You couldn't drive William Street, forget about Route 1 and everything else. Everything got gridlocked. And the same thing when that truck went vertical, the tip truck went vertical under the bridge in Stafford. It wasn't just the I-95 that got. My staff member, Stacy, who used to serve this committee, she had to drive from Wegmans home, and she lives near the train station at Lee's, Leland Road train station. She lives there, and she happened to be in Central Park when that tip truck went vertical. Got 45 minutes, not to ride on the I-95, to get across the I-95 to go home, right? It's not that we haven't done a good thing by widening I-95. We've reduced congestion on I-95. We really have. And the traffic on I-95 is going to move much better now for about 10 years. But what's going to happen is every car that gets on or off 95 has to go somewhere. So 17 is going to get clogged. Route 3 is going to get even more clogged. Same with Cowan, same with Falk Hill. So all these east-west routes are going to get further clogged because you've actually put more traffic on them by making it so easy to drive on I-95. It's called induced demand. It's the Walt Disney build it and they will come. So we built it. We built another 6 lanes on I-95 in our region and the bridges. What are they going to do? They're going to drive on.
Yeah.
So when they get off of I-95, what's going to happen? The side roads are all going to get clogged. And God help us if we have a major incident on I-95, like a tanker exploding, because by the time we get that fixed, the whole regional economy will have had a dent for 2 days because we can't move anywhere because there's not enough alternatives in the region. And we've got this worst freight bottleneck in the region. It's all our eggs are in one basket now. But that doesn't mean it was the wrong thing to do. We have reduced the general congestion on I-95 in our specific region. But we've not created alternatives for people. There's no grid net, there's no alternative. We've got a very narrow number of options. And all of the options to cross the Rappahannock River are all east of the I-95. It's 41 miles to the next bridge west of the I-95. No other way to cross for 41 miles.
Okay.
And there's 3 bridges on the east side of 95.
Just point, it's 37% of local traffic uses basically the, was going to the places in green that you saw at the previous round.
37% of the local traffic are doing something like the inverted.
Yes.
They're having to do that because there is no direct way to connect the ones with the arrows. Those are the block groups with
Yeah,
the arrows.
these would be the potential folks who would use a west of 95 river crossing and their streetlight index data. So you can see the percentages that, you know, 8 of the top 20 destinations are going to that.
By far, Central Park is the big
Yeah.
four bar. If you look at it, one on the left, big bar on the left. That's it.
So next steps, we are identifying route options to model. And keep in mind that is to model. We are working with the VDOT Transportation Mobility Planning Division. This is something that I've been doing, working with them to develop and say, okay, what can we do and how can we do it to generate those models? Because it's not just a draw a line, because VHB was very simplistic. This is a little bit in deeper depth here, but still a modeling exercise. We have contracted with the Virginia Outdoor Foundation and the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust. These are 2 major environmental groups that hold easements in the area. And because they hold easements on either side of the river, they have a very big realm of influence of dictating whether or not or where we can or whether or not we can put a road or a river crossing in this. Some of these easements do have a very clear exemption to providing a river crossing or a road or a bridge across. Others do not. So they say basically, if you're going to pave, nope, can't come through this area without basically compensating them in a very large capacity. We've also contacted the economic development departments of the various jurisdictions to kind of say, hey, one, what's your kind of take on this, as well as let us know what kind of commercial developments might be happening in the area that they are aware of. We've also solicited cost estimates for engineering NEPA, so we can kind of have an idea that says, okay, after this process, what was the cost of the next step? So it's like, okay, if we're going to have to do engineering or NEPA environmental assessment, how much is it going to cost us to go through that process? So again, we're fact finding through this. So that's kind of where we are. We're looking through the models, potential models and options feedback. We're looking at the easement maps to say, okay, is there a very clear place where, because the easement location, that becomes a much less viable option? Is there areas where there are no easements that could provide an option that has the sustainable kind of network around it? If there is a network around it, is that network potentially kind of not up to the capacity of handling that traffic? So it would require an additional improvement, so that we're going ahead and modeling an additional link to make those connections possible. And so we are kind of through that, and we're working with staff to kind of say, okay, is there anybody we missed? Because on one hand, it's like the city of Fredericksburg absolutely 100% knew that the Virginia Outdoor Foundation needed to be contacted. Then eventually it was identified that there's another easement group, the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, also holds easement. They kind of overlap in places. So like, okay, talk to them and see what type of easements on their books. So because they're quasi-private in some of these cases, they're not necessarily required for them to completely disclose it, but that we can say, hey, we're doing something. Would you mind disclosing? They give us some information, but we're not going to know the full extent of everything they do or hold in that area. So we can kind of look at the plat and some of the plat to kind of get an idea, but it's always not one-to-one, particularly with the mapping exercise. So staff will provide more feedback as we go, and we're asking if there are any questions, because I know that this is kicking off a big, fun topic that everybody wants to discuss at 8:30 in the evening.
I just want to say the only part of the river that doesn't have an easement west of 95 is basically right behind Route 17 commuter lot to 95. And any connection there to Route 17, I think, is too close with one connection, you'd have to spread it out and diffuse the traffic with like 3 connections. And with Sanford Drive there, dumping out traffic too, I think it's problematic, and it will not decrease traffic from the commuter lot west on 17. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Oh,
I just like to thank John and Connor because we are not paying consultants, the staff are doing the research. And these guys have worked. Can't show you yet because we don't, as staff, come to you with stuff until we fact checked it all. Because the last thing we want to do is give you half-baked information or wrong information. So we slowly do, right? Done more work with this, but I'm not showing it to you yet because I want to be sure that the data, that the maps, that the easements, we know the facts before we show you. We asked VDOT modeling department to rerun the model because we weren't happy with our showing outcomes because we thought there might be some errors in them. And so they've rerun the models. We must thank VDOT modeling department. The lady there worked right through the weekend. I didn't ask her to. She took it on herself and worked right through the weekend to redo the model because we thought there was some errors in it. And she redone it and sent it back to us. So there are a lot of people working, not charging the FAMPO, not charging the taxpayer. We're doing this all as part of our job so that we can do a good job of this. So we'll bring in the next set of data.
And something that's a little bit different in this process, because I know it's kind of been brought up, is that in like the East-West study, they're looking at 2050. We're pulling 2023, really 2022 data, and yeah, it's actual counts for a lot of the items, or their projections based on actual counts. So we're taking true volume counts there.
Thank you all for contributing to this.
okay. Moving on to 8A, has anyone done any VDOT reporter problems? Or received any progress updates on anything they reported? All right, moving on to 8B, member reports, topics of interest, partner informational. So this is the time that members.
Yes. Do you have this?
It's in.
Okay, you don't have it up.
There might be one missing one, so if you are missing one, let me know. I'll give you mine.
Last page where you see the I-95 improvements. Yes. You can zoom that in a little better. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, this is basically what I-95 is going to look like. The northbound section is complete. I know VDOT did the best they can because of the hot lanes that reverse back and forth. They were very limited to what they could do to I-95. But anyway, this section of I-95 actually has a higher traffic count than up on Route 610. More people cross the river here than on 95 than they do driving up near 610 on 95. So it's very critical, and we, as was stated earlier, that our transportation grid is very weak. And what I want to point out with this design, there's a serious flaw in the design. Okay, the bottom of 95 here is a northbound. Okay, as you can see, it goes from 6 lanes and it merges slowly down to 3 lanes. Okay, plus the hot lanes. But situation is when the hot lanes are going south, we're going to have a merge from 6 lanes on 95 to 3 lanes. So that's going to be a serious bottleneck in the future that we need to plan how we're going to mitigate that impact. And the only way to really mitigate that impact is river crossing to the west.
think that's also the same situation that we have if you're on 95 south, going south of Route 3, because you've got the 3 through lanes, 2 on the collector distributor, 1 coming from the ramp, so then you have also got a 6 to 3 situation.
Yes, but the traffic counts are much lower there. I think they're about 25,000 less trips. So that's the big factor. We're up at the highest traffic count in this section is right here, and versus anywhere else on 95 in our region. The highest traffic count on 95 goes over the river. Period. There's no. You have something on that?
Yeah, Joe's quite correct that this section of the I-95 has the worst traffic in our region, and that's why they built the bridges, because what we said earlier, it's the bottleneck. The bottleneck is the river. So because there are not that many ways to cross the rivers, the river becomes a place that the I-95 bottlenecks. And the only other thing I would add, though slightly ameliorates what Joe's saying, is that some people get off, they cross the river and get off on 7. Some people going south, cross the river and then get off at Route 3. So it's not the total volume that crosses the river that will end up on that bottleneck section. It is still high. Joe is correct, it is still high, but it is slightly less than the number that cross the river because some get off at 7.
Yeah, I guess the one good thing that we have going for us there is that at the worst times, it's likely that the hot lanes are flowing to the north anyway, at times of most congestion. So that's at least that's a little bit of alleviation.
Yeah, but that's during the week. I think the weekend isn't going to matter.
Yeah, because so.
Yeah. So, one other thing I want to say is this basically this plan for I-95, it came out of a 2013 study. And the study recommended these improvements be done first. But the study also recommended that another project be done, a river crossing be done as the second project. So this was only phase 1, and the politicians just kicked the can down the road and didn't follow up on the recommendations of the 2013 study.
That's new.
And I just don't want to see them kicking the can down the road again. When these lanes merge from 6 lanes to 3 lanes, we're going to have some serious problems, particularly on the weekend. And you're talking about changing Chatham Heights Road to 2 lanes when we're going to have bottlenecks here that's going to push traffic on Route 1 and Chatham Heights Road. We got some serious issues that we need to deal with, and we got to figure out how we're going to mitigate those impacts now. And the only mitigation I can see that's going to work is another river crossing. And that way, at least the local traffic can stay off of that bottleneck. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other members that would like to share anything? All right. Final public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. So if anybody would like to make a comment. Anyone online that would like to make a comment? All right. Future agenda items. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Motion? Second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Great. See you next month.
Yeah, that's it. You can vote yes or no, I'm leaving.
With, so.